and the questions of what keeps society glued together today. And these are all areas where anthropologists can make incredibly valuable contributions. So, credit, cohesion and complexity, in my mind, are three areas where there's an urgent need for more anthropological input into the discourse and into public policy debate. Doing that as an anthropology profession is pretty hard. Pretty hard for two reasons. Firstly, because academia tends to be marked by silos. I mean, it's not just banks that have silos, government bureaucracies that have silos, universities have silos. And breaking down those silos is incredibly difficult. That's partly because of prejudice. I mean, I used to joke that economists thought that anthropologists were rather weird and didn't want to talk to them because they were all a bit hippie and grubby. And I'm using that partly because an economist friend of mine used to joke to me about that. I think equally, many anthropologists might look at economists and say they don't really want to talk to economists because they're all a bit morally grubby, in the sense that they're busy talking about money, and money is seen as being rather a grubby thing, and they're too closely allied with power and policy and things like that. But we have to break down those prejudices if we're actually going to start having a meaningful discussion. I mean, tribalism within academia is as unhelpful as tribalism in other parts of life. Another big problem, of course, is the structure of university careers and the fact that most departments, most universities, most academic milieus do not reward interdisciplinary debate and interdisciplinary connections. I mean, people tend to rise through universities if they pursue one career track and they don't jump around. It's very hard. Again, there needs to be much more articulation of the problem and much more attempt to try and break down those barriers and get meaningful interdisciplinary study. But I think the other problem, ironically, is the nature of anthropology itself and anthropologists. What makes a great anthropologist is somebody who can effectively sit quietly and listen and observe. Anthropologists, at their best, are brilliant chameleons. At their best, they're very good at looking at power structures and being rather cynical about governments. At their best, anthropologists tend not to want to project themselves onto a stage. They want to kind of sit in the bushes or behind the curtains and basically watch everyone else. In many ways, they are the polar opposite of economists, if you like, who tend to have extraordinary certainty in their views, as opposed to anthropologists who are constantly hedging and being modest, and who tend to want to put themselves in centre stage and actually project their ideas on everyone else. Now, all of those qualities that make for great anthropologists and make for great observers also make for incredibly bad public policy people. Anthropologists tend to be very, very bad at advocating the values of their own discipline, partly because most anthropologists would rather die than go to Washington and stand up on a stage and actually engage with a grubby government, or actually engage with a kind of soundbite culture which is modern media today. But in many ways, if anthropology wants to get out there and actually has an impact, there has to be some compromise. There has to be an attempt to engage and actually do what anthropologists feel very uncomfortable about, and actually stand up and insert themselves into public policy and discourse in a much more active way. In my own small way, I've tried to do that in my own career. It's involved many compromises. I mean, I'm sure many of you can see the shortcomings of the modern media world. I mean, believe me, I can see them even more clearly as somebody who's actually living it every single day. And I spend my life in a rather schizophrenic way. Half of my brain is sitting there as an anthropologist trying to analyse how the media works. The other half is actually trying to get out there and do a media job and actually be engaged in that media world. So it involves a lot of compromises. But I, for one, believe that there is value in trying to make those compromises and get anthropology onto centre stage. Anthropology, as I say, has fundamentally informed the way that I approach financial journalism, and I hope it's made me a slightly better journalist. For my own part, I hope that having a platform as a financial journalist has helped to advance the cause of anthropology in terms of putting it up there at least a bit on the public stage. Laura Nader spoke a lot about trying to get anthropology in the world, and it's something that, frankly, I think we all need to be engaged with, now more than ever. Not just because it's going to make better journalists, not just because it's going to make better financiers or better financial system, but I hope it will, but because I think it's going to make better anthropology discipline too. So, I'll just stop there and say once again, I'm very, very grateful for having had the chance to come here today. I think what Laura Nader has done is very much a challenge and inspiration to all of us. And I wish you the very best of luck for all of you in finding your own personal compromise to take her mission forward. Thank you.